Hello and welcome to another edition of the Ubisoft lecture series. My name is David. I am very, very happy that I can be your host for today. And yeah, we have a very cool show prepared for you. If you stumbled upon the stream wondering, what's a lecture series? Let me just give you a quick primer to onboard you. So the lecture series is an ongoing show and every time we have one of these, we focus the episode on a specific job within the games industry, and we really take a deep dive and look what people that have this job and work in the game industry do for a living, what they do on a day-to-day basis, how their tasks look like, what their skill sets are like, how they got to where they are, so basically their career path. And the goal is to shed more light on how games are being developed, and the other aspect is, of course, we want to make people curious and maybe inspire them to follow in our developers' footsteps and become the devs of tomorrow and maybe find their own foothold in this crazy industry of ours. That would be very, very cool. Today's episode is about sound design, which is a very important topic. When you look at the huge impact that sound has on how we perceive and interact with games. I mean, many people will first and foremost say that video games are an interactive and a visual medium. I mean, it's literally in the name video game, video being Latin for I see. That's 7 years of Latin at school, finally paying off. But in fact, sound plays a major role in many, many different ways. I guess every one of us can imagine their favorite tune from a game, or iconic sound effects like bloop, 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 when you go down a pipe in a Super Mario game, or a bit closer to home when you do the leap of faith in Assassin's Creed. You hear this eagle cry. But these are just the very obvious and iconic sounds. But sound and music in games also work on a more subtle, more subliminal level even. And to make all this happen, you really need very, skilled and experienced sound designers. And one of which, sitting next to me right now. Hi, Luca. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks.
And you are today's lecturer.
Yes.
That's very cool. And we'll start in a moment. I just want to give people the chance that if you have any questions that come up during Luca's presentation, ask them in the chat. And, in between the presentation, we'll take short intermissions, and then we get to your questions, so you can really pick his brain on whatever comes up and has to do with the presentation. All right, I'm done. Now it's your turn.
Let's dive in.
Yeah.
So I'm Lukas Zieber. I'm audio designer here in Ubisoft Düsseldorf, and I've previously worked on the project Assassin's Creed Nexus VR and Anno 117 Pax Romana. And today I want to talk a little bit about what game audio actually is. We will dive a little bit deeper into sound design. I will show you a bit about implementation and mixing. And in the end, for those interested joining the games industry, or maybe even becoming an audio designer in games, I have some tips for you. So, what is game audio? First of all, to determine what is game audio, we have to ask ourselves, what exactly is it we hear or we want to hear in a game? So the first example that comes to mind is, of course, the music. And please let us know if the audio in the stream is not okay, but you should be hearing something. Then the voices.
No one ever listens to me.
The ambience. Sound effects for animations or other visuals. And UI, UX sounds. So how is game audio actually different from audio for film? When we speak about film audio or game audio, we usually refer to it as non-linear audio versus linear audio. So linear audio is film sound and non-linear audio is game. for film, you usually have a fixed soundtrack, no variations. So you have your sound design and your mixing in the digital audio workstation. It's the program we work with as sound designers. And you render everything out as this one track. And no matter how often you play it in the end, the sound does not really change. It always sounds the same. In games, in nonlinear audio, the soundscape constantly adapts to whatever is happening in the game, to whatever you're doing, what other players might be doing, how the story progresses, or, for example, what time of day it is. On the left side, you can see a linear audio track. That's what it looks like when we render those scenes. This is for one of the cutscenes in the game. And on the right side, you can see an in-game screenshot with a debug overlay where you see all these little boxes. These are sound emitters. And sound actually plays from their position, and it changes all the time depending on which objects you have in the scene right now. Something also very important in game audio is that for most of the sound effects that you create, you actually need variations. So in film, you usually have this one scene and you create sounds that fit to the scene. In games, you can trigger the same sound effect over and over again. So we don't have only this one footstep, for example, let's say for one surface type, concrete. We need several of them. The more the better, so that you as a player don't get bored of it. And in our audio middleware, I'm going to talk a little bit more what that is later. But in the program that we manage the sounds in, we can then put all these variations into a random container. And when the game engine calls a certain sound event and says, hey, I need to play this sound right now, then we trigger the random container and one of the random sounds get picked. So why is audio so important in the game? I have a few points that make audio very important for me. First of all, sound drives immersion and emotion. So when we create sounds for a game, we don't only support the visuals, but we also give them a feeling, actually. So the tone is really, determines how you perceive what you see on the screen. Secondly, audio events support the narrative. Of course, everybody thinks of voices that tell the story in the game, but it can also be certain sound effects that play in the right moment to support the happenings that you're in right now. And the third is you can actually take advantage by listening to the game. Say you play online first-person shooter game, you can actually hear your enemies before you see them, which gives you a great advantage. So what does a game audio department might look like, or an audio team on a project? First off, we have the direction, which is usually taken over by the audio director. They shape the creative vision for the game, for the audio in the game, and maintain it throughout the process. They are leading the team and the creative vision and constantly give feedback. Then in design, we have audio designers, sound designers, Foley designers, and voice designers, where the audio designers are a little bit of all-rounders. We work in creative sound design, we record sounds, but we also go into the engine and implement things. And in the example of Anno 117, we're a very small team in audio. We have 3 audio designers and 1 audio director. And yeah, there are projects that are way bigger than this, and also then employ more specific positions, like for example the sound designer, whose focus is really on creating sound effects, but not really going into the technical parts in the engine. Or the Foley designer who records sounds from all kinds of objects they can find. Or the voice designers who record and implement the voice actors in the game. For tech, we have the audio programmers or technical audio designers that go really into the most technical thing, the code in the game, the programming, things that are then too specific for us audio designers to work on. That's what we have those people for. And everything organization related is usually taken over by an audio project manager. So, for example, task management. And in QA, we have the audio testers who constantly play the game, report if they spot anything, any technical problems, so bugs, or if they just play and feel like there's something off, they also let us know. They write tickets for us. And when we have implemented a feature or fixed a bug, they also help validating. So QA is a very important part of the game development. So how do we collaborate? Let's take an example of collaboration between audio and UI. Let's say there's a certain menu in the game that we want to work on. First off, every feature in the game is documented beforehand. So what I do is I go and read the design document. I check out if there are any specific goals, if anything related to sound has been already defined. And other than that, I talk to maybe the feature owner, the feature designer, discuss the feature maybe with other audio people and create a concept for audio. And yeah, design the sounds. Then we would coordinate and request implementation. That's then usually done by the UI designer or the UI programmer. And once they are done, they hand back to us, and we can then validate and work on it further if needed, or give it a go to go live. So that's it with part 1. David, are there any questions so far?
Yes, there's a question.
All right.
And it's from, and I hope I pronounce this correctly, Desolnochi? I guess so. Which game is an audio highlight from your perspective?
So I'd say both of the games I've worked on so far. Assassin's Creed Nexus was a really special project, especially because of the team. I joined late during the production phase, but it was just a great experience because we were like a large audio team working all together in the office, having a really good time and creating a really cool game all together. But in Anno 117, I'd say it's also a really cool one because I had such a huge impact on it. Because we're such a small team on it, which is also cool. Everybody did get to touch a lot of different features, and that's a really cool thing.
And we see some examples later on.
Yes, exactly. I'll
That's really
also
cool.
show some more stuff.
So stay tuned. Okay, maybe we continue.
Right.
Yep.
Then let's head into part 2, sound design. So how does a sound get from creating to into the game? So first off, like just described, we create a concept for what is needed. Then we might put some placeholders in the game, so there is something playing already, but it does not always then resemble the final result. But it's not completely quiet while we do the design. Then we put in the first design and gather feedback. Everybody plays the game. We just see how it feels and discuss it. And if needed, we apply further polishing. So redesign or just some more tweaks. And once everybody is happy with the sound, it goes live. So where do we actually get the sounds from? The first way is, of course, recording. And we differentiate usually between Foley recording, which is, like already said, recording a sound from like any object that you can find that makes any sound, or field recording, where you go out with a recorder and a microphone and record, for example, ambiences, animals, gunshots, vehicles, everything that you can't put into the studio. You can also synthesize sounds, so you can use analog or digital gear to create sounds completely digitally. Of course, if the project's if it's the project's need. And we can also use sounds from libraries. We don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. We don't have to re-record the same dog barking for every game. So those have been recorded over and over again. We can use them. And there are commercial libraries. We have internal libraries that are created by teams within Ubisoft. And we can also use closing kits from the projects that that Ubisoft already has developed. So I will show you a little bit more about the recording part. This is from a Foley recording I've done for Anno 117. You can see a few tools, instruments, pieces of armor and arrows and so on. And I used these to create the UX sounds for this game. And UX in this sense means the feedback sounds when you click around, when you do things in the game, when you do actions, and you always get an audible feedback. And here, for example, I recorded some sounds from pieces of armor with the goal to make sounds for when you select units in Anno. Then the sound should reflect what type of unit it is. And for example, the legionaries have like really heavy armors on them. You can like see them, and that's why I wanted it to sound like that as well. And it looks a bit funny, but that's really what Foley recording is. You try to get every possible sound of what you have, and then later on use that in your sound design. And then I also went out and recorded ambiences. This one somewhere in a forest. I try to find spots that are very quiet, so where you don't have traffic background noise, for example. This happened in winter, where you have less birds chirping around. And here I recorded also some sounds at night, because we of course have different times of day in the game. Once recorded, in post-production we clean up the recordings, so we remove any unwanted noise from the recordings. When we record ambiences, we often record for a longer time, so when there's an hour of recording, I usually sit somewhere near the microphone, and when I hear some noises that shouldn't be in the game later, then I yell at the microphone, like for example airplane, and then during post-production I can actually see in the waveform where I yelled, and then quickly jump to the points where I have to cut out some noises, for example the airplane noise. We add effects if necessary, especially for Foley. We often add a little bit of compression or EQ. And yeah, if we have ambience recordings, we create loops. So in the game, you don't really have like an hour of recorded ambience for each type of ambience. It's usually a minute or a few minutes that are constantly looping, and that's what we need to create for the export before we export. That it's like seamlessly looping, yeah, cut everything into the right length, like the Foley sound effects. So we create the right parts for the export. And then, of course, when we export it, we have to name it. Every project has some defined naming convention, so everything is in order. So that's also a very important thing to do. Creating sound effects. I have an example for you of a sound effect from like concepting over design to the final result in game, which is in Anno, the sound effect when you place a building in the game world. So first of all, I categorized it, and we must have an SFX for placing a building. It should reflect the building sizes, so small, medium, or large. And if I have time later, I could also add sound layers that reflect the ground material that the building is placed on. This is from within our digital audio workstation, short DAW. And here you can see, so we have 3 sets of sounds each. So we have small, medium, and large for like the placement building placement sound. So it's 3 variations for each sound. And I'm gonna show you that a sound effect is often not just this one recorded sound. It's a composite of many different layers that come together. Another dust layer, dust and debris for when you place the building on land. And we're gonna look at the other material layers in the middleware right now. So the middleware, the audio middleware, is where we, after designing the sounds, import them all, where we can manage them. We can create audio systems, audio structures. We have our signal flow in there. And here we can also set game syncs. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. But now I'm playing those placement sounds and set different material layers. So we start off with marsh. And that's what it looks like in the game. The sounds that you hear in a game are oftentimes not the first version of that sound. So when we design something, we put it into the game and see how it feels. And oftentimes, especially when early on in the production process of a game, we designed something, but then visuals were still work in progress, and things might change, so we have to adapt as well on audio side. And I want to take you on a journey of how one of the sounds in the game evolved over time. This is the sound when in Anno your city levels up, so your population grew by a certain amount, and your city reaches a new level. And then a banner appears on the screen and celebrates, and of course there also needs to be a sound for it. So this was the first version. Then for the second version, I wanted to add some more instrumental layers. In the third version, I thought celebrating the city would be maybe better with a few voices in it. Then in version 4, I went a little bit back to the roots because also the visuals had changed a little. And also the shakers are way more subtle right now. And then for the final version 5, that was like a final adaptation for the visuals. And that's the final result in the game. And with that, we already reached the end of the part. Are there any questions about that so far?
But there are questions, some of which actually touch upon the first part a little bit. Johnny Games 75 is asking, because you mentioned in the beginning briefly that you also worked on Assassin's Creed Nexus, which is a VR game. What did you like about AC Nexus? What was your favorite thing about it?
That's a good question. So I would say I'm a huge fan of 3D audio, and since it's a VR game, the entire thing is in 3D audio. Even the music was mixed in 3D, in ambisonics actually, and I really enjoyed that about VR gaming, that it's so super immersive, and that the emphasis of the sound is put on spatial formats.
Thank you, Johnny. Another question by Kaylee Strawberry. I'd love to know more about how y'all hire talent for performing the music composed for your games, like the vocalists, the instrumentalists, the orchestras.
I'm not too deep into this topic, but what I can tell you about Anno, for example, we work closely together with a company called Dynamedion. And they have all the stuff. So what we basically do, or what our audio director does, is we expect this kind of creative vision, and then they have the composers, they have the artists, they do the orchestra recordings, and if necessary, vocal recordings. So we're not too involved with that.
And there's another question, but I would like to come back to this later because it touches upon the final part of the presentation. So, UP25, you're not forgotten. Your question will be asked.
All right. Then let's go into part 3, implementation. So a common question from newcomers is often, do I need to know how to code as an audio designer? And the answer is, it's not a must, but highly beneficial. You can work in game development without knowing coding, but you will be just way more efficient in your collaboration and your communication, especially with the programmers when you request implementation and features, when you just know what you're talking about, and you don't have to be a full-fledged programmer. You don't have to know how to code the game, but getting a little bit into the fundamentals, learning a simple language like Python or something like that definitely helps. The pipeline. So in our DAW, the digital audio workstation, we design our sound effects with the variations and export them in our standardized naming and loudness. Then they are imported into the audio middleware, where we can do all the systems, audio systems design. So also in audio systems, we do have some logic, and we constantly get information from the game engine. And depending on that, we can set our systems to whatever is needed right now. We also manage the music system in the middleware, voices and languages. And that's a very important part, actually for every feature, not only audio. But we always try to be as efficient as possible in terms of CPU and memory usage. So what we do is we manage file conversion and sound banks also in the middleware. And then in the engine, where the game logic and the code runs, the events, the sound events are triggered, game syncs are set, and so on. And our sound package that we generate from our middleware that is integrated into the game then handles all the audio, all the mix, signal flow, in and outputs, and so on. A quick example of how it went from concepting to implementing audio for a building in Anno, which is here the warehouse, the harbor warehouse. So we have defined a few different sounds that we want to hear when we zoom in really close onto the warehouse. For example, a cat meowing, a door is opening and closing, there are chickens running around. And then when you zoom out a little bit, you should not hear those anymore, but you should still be able to hear heavier sounds like the crane. There's a big crane in front of the warehouse. There are ship bells ringing and seagulls making sounds. And then when you zoom out completely to the maximum, you should not be able to hear anything. So in our middleware, we have a sound event which calls containers of sounds which all play together. And we have a container for like the close sounds and the medium sounds. And then within these containers, we have all our random containers with all the variational sounds in it. And whenever we're close to the building, that sound event is called, and everything starts playing. And when we're zooming in close, we hear the close sounds. When we're zooming in medium, we can only hear the medium sounds. And then also, depending on how far you're away from the building, we attenuate the sounds, so we lower them in volume until they disappear. And that is then routed to the audio bus, and from there to your output. That's what the signal flow looks a bit like in the middleware, but I don't want to confuse you too much with that. Just to mention, we can profile the game while we play and see very exactly what is always happening, where are signals going, and where do they come from. And that's the example now from in-game. I'm first going to show what it sounds all together with the music, with the environment. Then I'm going to solo the building itself, and we can hear what is actually playing from there. So something I've teasered earlier already, a very important thing we utilize very often are game syncs that are basically informations coming from the engine to the sound engine in the form of values. So we can receive switches. For example, when I place a building, is it a small, medium, or large building? And according to that, I can play the correct sound. Or it tells me what's the ground material I'm placing the building on, so I can play the correct material layer. Then states are more a global thing that give us, for example, the information here, which screen is the player in right now. So if the player goes into the pause menu, then we can muffle the sounds of like the diegetics in-game sounds, so it doesn't feel like that the game keeps running in the background. Or when you go into a full screen menu, then we can mute the sounds, the in-game sounds completely, so they're not distracting. And we also use those states often for music, switching music pieces. When you go back to the title menu, you will hear one of the main themes. Yeah, things like that. And parameters are number values. So for example, from 0 to 100, camera height to terrain is a value that we often use to attenuate sounds when we zoom out. So things that are supposed to be only heard while we're near the ground, like environment sounds, trees rustling, or unit sounds. We use this parameter for it. Or when you go to the audio menu and set volume sliders, then you're effectively sending a value to the sound engine and telling it to lower one of the buses by a certain amount of dB. Or the productivity parameter that tells us if a building, a production building in the world is maybe less productive. For example, if it doesn't have enough workforce or enough goods to produce, then the productivity lowers, and this is also reflected in sound. And that's the end of part 3 already.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions?
Yes. Flame Lizard Codes asks, and it's a longer one. Since Ubisoft has already published a lot of games with different franchises, how big is the percentage of sounds that you reuse from previous games, if you do that at all? To annotate the question, is the use of the assets similar to other categories of assets, or is it always created from scratch?
So, very good question. Mm-hmm. We do reuse a lot, especially for all of these background sounds. Like when you, like I said, we don't need to like record the same dog over and over again. If we have it in the library, we can just use that. Because we also have a certain budget for every production. And also a certain workforce. For Anno, we were only 3 designers. And we did record things. For example, I recorded those ambiences. And for UX, because that is a very integral part of the game. This type of game, you're clicking around a lot. And UX is a very, is like the language that speaks to the player. And I try to keep this as original as possible. So I recorded a lot of sounds for it. But also, even when we reuse sounds from previous games, it doesn't mean that they will appear in the game especially like exactly like that. Because we often, like I showed in my example, we often layer sounds to create a completely new sound effect from it. So even if we reuse sounds, sometimes they are used to create something completely different out of it. And what was the second part of the question?
Is the use of assets similar to other categories of assets? Or is it always created from scratch? But I think you
Yeah,
answered
exactly.
this.
That was answered. Mm-hmm.
And another question from Flame Lizard Codes. Ooh, that one is even longer. But that's good. It's a good question. Regarding the connection between the game engine and the middleware, does it automatically know which sounds are being used and automatically exports only those? Or do you need to do that manually? Also, maybe let's do that question first and then we get to the next part.
So the middleware puts the sounds into the game that we actually use. Yeah, that is. So we have the sound banks, and we usually only put the sound events, and the sound effects into the sound banks that are actually used in the game, because of we always need to consider memory usage. So we try to not put any unused sounds in the game, and yeah, this is created like the middleware creates like this sound bank package, so with all the converted files, and then sends them to the game engine.
So second part of the question, how are the files being exported to the game engine? Are the audio files as is? And there's a middleware file that has all the references to the audio files and how they should be used in the gameplay?
So there are no actual audio files exported to the game engine, but we do, like when we work in the digital audio workstation, we export the files and put them into the middleware. They are there as like WAV files. And then from this point on, they are only handled within these sound bank packages. So if you would want to like extract them, you would kind of crack the sound bank. So they are not in the game engine as like this one sound file.
Just want to take the opportunity and thank Flame Lizard Codes for their questions. It's always cool to see someone being so interested and engaged. So keep those questions coming. Very, very cool. And there's another one. Joshua Colossus. Are all game sync or state variables known to you, or do you negotiate with your colleagues what needs to be exposed?
Second. We in the middleware create the game syncs first, and then we request from the programmers that they hook them up in the game engine. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Joshua. Okay, I think we can move on. And we'll have more opportunities for questions later.
Okay. Yeah, then let's dive into part 4, mixing. So what do we actually do when we say we are mixing? We're trying to bring the game into a certain loudness. So in digital audio, we work with a loudness scale that where 0 is the highest and it goes down to minus infinite. And we try to be at an average loudness of minus 23 loudness units full scale. This is the scale that we work with. And we have a tolerance of plus minus 1 loudness units. And all of that is usually measured in 30 minutes of gameplay. That's what it looks like when we measure something. Here, for example, this is the measuring of the first cutscene in the game. And yeah, we have like a bunch of different values, but the most important, as said, is the highlighted value here, which is called the integrated volume level. In-game, volumes of single sound sources are not static. They change all the time. And that is depending on the player's position relative to the game object's position. So we always measure what's the distance from the player. We call it the listener in the game, to the sound emitter. And then we can set at what distance the sound should be attenuated by what amount. That's what we call attenuation. And we create those attenuation sets for like very specific uses in the game. Not every sound in the game has the same attenuation. That's very important. Like there are those background city sounds that might have a very short attenuation, but the UX sounds, your feedback sounds, when you build something in the world, then this has a really long attenuation, because you should always be able to hear what you yourself are doing. On the other hand, when you're playing multiplayer and there are other people placing a building and you see and hear that, those sounds are not triggered by you, so their attenuation is much shorter. In Wise, we have a bus structure, that is the audio signal flow. And to spare you the technical and hard to understandable screenshots, I have simplified it a little bit. So let's say there's a ship and we have some sounds playing on the ship, like the sail flapping in the wind, or the wood cracking. And this is then in the sound engine routed to a bus. For example, the units bus, and all the sounds that are emitted by units go to this units bus. That makes it super helpful for us to, when we play the game and we want to listen to a very specific thing in the game, we can just solo this one thing in our middleware while the game is running, and then we will only hear this one thing, and we can solo single SFXs, or we can solo buses. And so we could, for example, solo the units bus and hear only what's going on with units. But also we can use it for mixing. If we feel like at some point, hey, all the units are a bit too loud, then we can just all together bring them down by a few dB. So we can also add effects to any sound effects. So that's confusing. When I say sound effect, then I mean an SFX, which is a sound file. But when I say effect, then I mean an actual effect that is applied onto an SFX. So, for example, a reverb, a delay, those are applied, for example, depending on where a sound is emitted in the game. Say in Assassin's Creed Nexus, we had levels, and you could walk into many different rooms with different sizes. You could walk outside, and for every sound that is emitted within a room or maybe outside or wherever, we always apply an effect that makes this, or that reflects the room size and the surroundings of you. Then the signals are all together sent to the SFX bus in this case. Everything that we consider SFX files are sent to the SFX bus. Then we have a bus for voices, music, and then for all the UI sounds. And these buses are also where the game parameters sent from the audio options menu sliders are then applied. So if you set a value in the audio options menu, then it is applied on one of these buses, or on the master audio bus for the master volume. And from there it goes to your system output. One thing I want to mention again is 3D audio. What is that? So it adds, of course, another axis, the height axis, to the sound. So you can hear sounds not only from the front or from the sides, but also even above or below you. And for that, you would usually use height speakers if you like to play on speakers. But there's also a really cool way to achieve 3D audio with headphones. It's super simple. And I mean normal 2-channel stereo headphones. So there is a filter that we call HRTF. It's the head-related transfer function. When we apply this to a multi-channel output, audio output, then it creates a binaural mix made for headphones. And what really happens there is that we emulate that the sound is actually traveling around your body and your ears, and is bent around your ears to achieve this 3D audio effect. A really cool and famous example I can recommend on YouTube is the virtual barbershop. Go check it out, it's really fun. And binaural audio might be offered by the game, might be delivered by the game already. So then you would usually have a setting in the game that lets you choose as an output headphones. And yeah, depending if the game offers it or not, it could then output a binaural sound signal for you. Or there are also platform native renderers. So for example, on Microsoft platforms, we have Windows Sonic. And on PS5, it's Tempest. That what they do is they create a virtual 7.1.4 output for the game. So the game thinks it's outputting the sound to a large multi-channel speaker system. And then these spatial audio renderers put the filter on it and create a binaural signal for your ears. And to use it, you just have to go in your sound settings and turn on the spatial sound renderer, for example, Windows Sonic. An example for that is Anno. We don't have any audio output settings. We actually detect what output you are using and adapt to it automatically. And then if you turn on a native platform spatial renderer, you will actually get 3D audio on your headphones. That's it with part 4.
We have another question from Flame Lizard Codes. Appreciate you. And that's about a topic that is always a very big one at Ubisoft, because we take lots of time on accessibility. Wouldn't it make sense to allow players to set the volume of audio buses higher than 100%, say 150%, to allow better balancing with external sound sources like Discord calls or whatever?
Well, in theory, yeah. We usually cater for normal consumer needs. A workaround for that would probably be that you lower everything else in your windows and then leave the game at 100%. But it's definitely worth a thought. I've already also thought about, like, why don't we actually in a game make the default setting for sound maybe 75%, and that will be our minus 23 loudness, and then let people make something louder. But yeah, it's something very individually decided for each game, if we want to give people that much access to options, because also oftentimes you can destroy your gaming experience by having too many options that you, for example, don't really know how to actually use them.
Okay, thank you. Question from Hoopy25, and I have not forgotten the other question. Is there also a guideline for volume in games, as there is for films? In films, there is the EBU R128. Someone obviously knows their stuff.
Exactly, yeah, and that's also the one that we are looking at. The EBU R128 says that the movie as a total needs to be at minus 23. And for us then, we, because you cannot say the entire game, because you can play a game for 10 minutes, but you can also play a game for 1,000 hours. So that's why we say 30 minutes of gameplay of average gameplay. So if you have like a lot of action scenes or very quiet scenes, you try to get a bit of both into it, and that's when we try to measure those minus 23 LUFS.
Flame Lizard Codes is asking, since your presentation was mainly focused on AAA production for audio, do you have specific recommendation that audio designers should think about when working on indie games with less sophisticated audio software, no middleware, for instance?
Yeah, it is definitely possible working with without a middleware, but to be honest, it's not that complicated or costly to use a middleware. For example, Wise has I think really good offers for indie. So if I would work in indie, I would always try to get the team to work with Wise, because it's just a really good solution. But other than that, it depends on what platform you're working on. In Unity and Unreal, you do have an internal audio engine, like internal sound engine integrated into the game engine. But yeah, I would still always recommend Wise.
Okay. Bruder Samedi has a question. What percentage of players do you expect to play with headphones as opposed to speakers? Do these numbers vary between platforms?
Yeah. So usually we do expect that most players actually use headphones when gaming. And also here it totally depends on the project and on the platform you're playing on, because on mobile it would probably be different. On Assassin's Creed Nexus VR, we developed solely for Meta Quest, so you always have headphones. We didn't need to cater for any other outputs. But in Anno, we still think that that most players use headphones, but especially because it's such a laid-back game experience, we also know that many players use speakers. So we tested everything very thoroughly.
And back to Flame Lizard Codes. Are there sounds that are harder to implement than others?
Yes, of course. Yeah. So for some sounds, we always need support from the feature teams. And some sounds we can just implement ourselves. And it also depends on the engine a lot. In Anno, we need a lot of programming support, and oftentimes once they have created, like, for example, we have a sound emitter in the game, and every object that needs sound, we can just put a sound emitter on and then say, if the game object does this, play this sound. It's like super easy. But whenever something needs to be implemented that is unusual, then we probably need support, and that's then a bit more complicated.
Okay, should we... Oh, no, there's another one. The chat wants to know what the YouTube video was that you mentioned earlier, on the 3D audio slide. I think it's the virtual...
Oh, if you just type in the YouTube search virtual barber shop.
Virtual barbershop.
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't spoil what it is. Just let people be
Yes.
surprised. All right, be surprised. Okay, shall we move on to the final section?
Yes. For anybody interested in game audio or becoming an audio designer, or even this applies really to any discipline out there. So I would recommend for you to build, first of all, knowledge. Somehow you need to get the knowledge. This is usually the easiest way is by studying, but this is not a must. So even without studying, you can get all the knowledge you need to work in game development. But I don't only mean that. Even after you have landed your first job, never cease to keep learning, because technology keeps evolving. And if you want to stay interesting to the teams, to teams that want to hire you, you have to go with the time. Then the second thing is technical understanding. So you have to get to wrap your head around game logic, code, get into the fundamentals of programming. It will really help you and will be an advantage in every application. Soft skills is really at least as important as the knowledge part. Everybody can build knowledge, even if you're hired and you don't know everything. What is important is that you know how to learn it, so you can still build knowledge after you're hired. What is very difficult to build afterwards is soft skills. So that's something that is looked at when you apply, that you are, for example, able to work in a team. This is there is no way around teamwork in game development. This is the most important thing. You always collaborate with teammates, with feature teams, with a lot of different people. So that is definitely something you should work on. And yeah, all the other soft skills, discipline, organization, reliability, all of that are really important things that employers look for. Then a portfolio. You have to show your potential employer what you can do. And the easiest way is by just creating a short snippet of the projects that you've worked on. And if you didn't have any fancy projects in the past that you worked on, if you're, for example, a student, then just grab a trailer from the internet and redesign the sounds for it. And the last thing is networking. Very important part of the industry. Not in terms of the industry is corrupt, but more in terms of it's really helpful when people already know your name and your face. Get to know the industry, because it's also really small, the game development industry, and especially the game audio industry. And go to networking events, go to Gamescom, DevCom if you can, go to local game dev meetups in your town, and really get to know the people, not only the audio people, but also all the other disciplines, because they are the ones that might be looking for audio designers. And yeah, last but not least, what's also a little bit important in hiring is always luck. Everybody needs a little bit luck. Sometimes you're just at the right place in the right time and things just work out. Sometimes they don't. Don't be disappointed, and just keep trying. It's just part of life. So I would say thank you so much for your time. Thanks for listening, and we're open to any more questions.
And there are. Huppy, finally getting to your question. I am very interested. I am very interested in working as a game audio designer after completing my diploma at SAE. Are there any opportunities to start with you? Internships, for instance?
I'm not aware of any options as for internships here right now, but you should definitely like keep a look at the market, because there are opportunities opening and closing all the time. And yeah, also Ubisoft sometimes has those opportunities. Also, currently we're running a mentorship program for women and non-binary people, where we mentor people who have just studied how to become a better game developer. So those options are often happening.
Yeah. And in addition to what you mentioned earlier, the meetups, for instance, like those opportunities, are definitely use them in an area near you. Okay, that name is complicated. Oretriada? I am sure that's the way to pronounce this. How do you handle overlapping sounds? It's a good question. For example, if you quickly place multiple buildings in Anno, I would expect the placement sound to distort.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
We actually limit the playback. So when you... I'm not sure, but when you try it, it should like kill the first sound. So we allow like a certain instances of sounds playing at the same time. And when too many play, let's say 3 or 4, then the oldest one just gets killed. Yep.
Okay. Meetix has a question. How do you make sound, especially voice, sound like part of the game? Because I noticed, despite using good quality microphones, the voice doesn't actually sound as integrated into the game.
Sorry, can you read the first part of the question?
Yeah. How do you make sound, especially voice, sound like part of the game?
So when we get voice recordings, they are usually dry. So they are recorded in a studio by a voice actor, and when we put them into the game, we don't play them back dry as they are, but we usually apply effects to give them some spatial feeling that they are really in this room. That's that's like a part of all the other editing that happens after a recording. That's really what we additionally do in the middleware, and that's oftentimes done live. For example, in Anno, we call them the murmurs, that are the sounds that come from within the city. So wherever people run around, there are like random voices playing and saying something, like random comments, and we gave them also certain effects, like some filtering, some reverb, so it sounds like they're a bit coming from the distance.
Thank you. Pantoffeltierchen, how many people are working on the sound of Anno?
3 audio designers and 1 audio director.
So it's, as you said, it's a relatively small team.
Yeah.
And just curiosity, how big was the team in Nexus?
In Nexus, at peak times, we were probably around 20 people.
Okay, that's a difference. Okay. Currently, I do not see any more questions. Maybe let's give them like 1 more minute.
Sure.
So what? Because like it's there because I mentioned it in the beginning, and also there was a question that was very close. Do you have any like very iconic sound effects from games that you say, this is something I could recognize? You wake me up at 3 a.m. in the morning, you play the sound or this music, and I immediately know, that's from game X. And Anno doesn't count because you worked on this for several years.
Does Assassin's Creed count? Because
yes, of course it does.
I played it before I joined Game Dev. So yeah, some of those eagle sounds, of course. The like hidden blade sounds, but also like some old school stuff. Like when I think about it now, grinding in Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3.
Yeah, I know the one.
Yes, things like that. Things that you like heard over and over again, like for hours, because they're just constantly happening.
Cool. Okay. I guess we have answered all the questions then, which is always a good sign. Very very insightful, very comprehensive presentation. So I want to, because you thank the audience, I want to thank you for your time and for this very very cool and insightful lecture. But I also want to thank the audience again for all their questions and contributions. Very cool. For the next one, keep that up. That's always very fun to make this very feel very interactive, and also helps us in our goal to really make this somewhat educational and really like cater to your questions and your interests. And of course, I want to thank Julia for live producing this, as always. Peak job. And of course, the moderators in the back always doing a splendid job as always. All right, that concludes today's session. Be safe, stay safe, and tschö.
Bye-bye.
Bye.